Okay, I'm going to continue going over things in chapter 3 that I think it's very important, to focus on. Because there's a lot in chapter 3, and, after you finish it, you might say, well, what do I really need to know? So I want to focus on what I think you really need to know. I want you to be very clear as to the difference between a vague expression and an ambiguous expression. Something is vague if you don't know where to draw the lines. I'll give you an example. The word tall is within certain contexts. All words are spoken within context. So within certain contexts, the word tall can be vague, meaning we all know what it means. We all know what tall is. I mean, the problem, though, comes to specific cases. What exactly does somebody mean by tall? Imagine a situation in which you want to join a basketball team, and there's a sign. The coach says only tall people need, apply to get on the team. Okay, now let's say you're 5'11", and most people think 5'11" is tall, but it may not be tall for a basketball team. So you might ask the coach, I know what tall means, but am I tall? And the coach might say, no, 5'11" is not tall. I'm talking about people 6'2" and over. So tall is a vague word. So is wealthy. We all know what wealthy means. It means you have a lot of money. But is a certain person wealthy? Well, some people think if you have $20,000, you're wealthy. Some people some people might think you need 100,000. Some people think you need $1 million. If you're a billionaire, you might think somebody that only has $1 million, you wouldn't call them wealthy at all. So the word wealthy is a vague word. Tall is a vague word, meaning within certain contexts, the word needs to be clarified. We all know what the word means, but we don't know whether specific instances fall within it. An ambiguous expression or word is where we don't know what the word means. We have to choose between two totally different meanings. Imagine a situation in which you have a friend and sometimes you meet for lunch at the bank of the river. Other times, let's say you meet at a bank, let's say a Wells Fargo bank or a Bank of America. Okay, so you say to your friend, okay, I'll meet you at the bank for lunch. And now, sometimes you meet the Bank of the River, sometimes at the Wells Fargo Bank. So your friend at this point, your friend might say to you, I don't know what you mean. Are you talking about the Bank of the River, or are you talking about the Wells Fargo Bank? That word in that context is ambiguous. It's ambiguous because we don't know what it means. And so we have to ask the person, between two meanings, which one do you mean? When a word is used vaguely, we know what it means. We just don't know where to draw the line between what fits to that word and what doesn't fit the word. Okay, that's the main thing. Here we know what the word means. Here we don't know what it means. We have to choose between two totally different meanings. So let me go over some examples. I wrote some examples. I'll do vagueness first. I'll just read some sentences. The first one is, we need to create a just society. Okay, just. That's a vague word. We know what just means. It means something to do with fairness, but it's a very vague word. I mean, it could mean, many people have very different ideas about what they mean, what we consider just. So just is a vague word. And so you have to be very careful with those type of words. Politicians use words like this all the time, where everybody's for a just society. That actually tells you nothing. And unless it's actually clarified, it's a meaningless word. It's a buzzword. We have free will. What do you mean by free will? We all kind of know what you mean, but exactly what you mean. Free will is a vague word, a vague term. And books and books and books have been written about it throughout the history of philosophy. 3, Shakespeare is a great writer, and so is Joan Didion and Stephen King. Again, a great writer, that's a very vague term. Yeah, we kind of know what a great writer means. You're a good writer, really great. But what are the standards by which you judge? I mean, I think everybody would have judged that Shakespeare is a great writer, but I don't think too many people can put Stephen King in the class of Shakespeare. So you have to vague. So the word great writer is vague. The U.S. condemns torture. Okay, well, we all know what torture means in a vague sense of the word, but is waterboarding torture? Is solitary confinement torture? The person has to tell us. Torture itself is a vague word. 5, only persons are protected by the Constitution. What exactly is a person? That person is a vague word. People who, in our society, corporations are considered persons. They have all the rights of persons. Many people don't have rights of persons. I mean, if they're illegal immigrants, before the law, they're not persons. Is abortion the killing of an unborn person? The word person itself is very vague. It needs to be defined, made more precise. And people argue about this, and becomes a big debatable issue because the word person itself is a vague term. 6, another one, democracy is a great form of government. Again, what do you mean by democracy? Everyone's for democracy. I mean, governments, no matter what type they are, socialist, communist, totalitarian, they all say they're democratic. What is democracy? It's a vague word. Socialism is a threat to democracy. Socialism is a very vague word. Many people can mean many, many different things by that. The novel I'm reading now is long. What do you mean by long? 200 pages, 100, 300 pages, 500 pages? How far is it to the store? Oh, not too far. Too far. That's very vague. Does the person mean, well, it's not more than 5 miles, it's not more than 2 blocks? It doesn't tell you. The word too far as it stands is very vague. I did fine on the test. Fine. That's very vague. What do you mean? Well, you did fine. You did good. But what does that mean? You got an A, you got a B, you got a C. Her parents have a lot of money. What does that mean? What's a lot of money? That's very vague. John is tall. I already went over that one. Tall. Very vague. I spent a lot of time on reading. What do you mean by a lot of time? What does that mean? Only children can come to the party. Well, how old do you have to be a child? When do you cease to being a child? If you're 9 years old, you're a child. If you're 10 years old, you're a child. 11. At what point do you cease to be a child? So child and children are vague terms. Only intelligent people are welcome to the chess club. Okay, intelligent. That's a very vague term. What exactly do you mean by intelligent? Who's in and who's out? Now I want to go over some examples of semantic ambiguity. That's like the example of the bank. Semantic ambiguity arises when a word can have 2 or more meanings. Semantics deals with meaning. So if we're talking about semantic ambiguity, it means we're talking about a situation in which the ambiguity arises not because the sentence is written poorly, but because we don't understand certain words in the sentence. I'll give you some examples. There is a lot for sale today. There is a lot for sale today. If you don't know the context, that sentence is ambiguous. You really don't know what it means. It could mean there's much, there's a lot you could buy. There's a lot of it out there. Or it could mean there's a lot, a piece of land. There is a lot for sale today. Or it could mean there's a lot of land, much land. Okay, totally different meanings. That's an example of semantic ambiguity. Another one, Jessica is cold. What does that mean? Emotionally cold? Or is she cold? I mean, she's shivering. Without the context, it's ambiguous. And Jennifer never used glasses. What does that mean? She didn't use spectacles to look through, or she used paper cups, not glasses. Another one is we are innately selfish. And philosophers have been arguing about that for years. But that's ambiguous, selfish. What do you it could be ambiguous too. Selfish, it's ambiguous and vague. We might agree on what selfish means, but we might disagree over specific cases. But this is also a good, innately selfish is also can be seen as ambiguous because we really can't answer it until we define what we mean by selfish. So that's, some of these words are ambiguous and vague at the same time, but in different ways. Okay, now I want to talk about some examples of syntactic ambiguity. I think these are the most interesting. Syntactic ambiguity means that the ambiguity arises from the structure of the sentence itself. It's poorly written. So I'll give you some examples. People who steal often get arrested. What does that mean? Does it mean people who steal even one time? People who steal, they often get arrested? Or does it mean, that could mean that. Or does it mean people who often steal? You steal many times, they get arrested. The problem there is that where the word often is placed. People who steal often get arrested. So we don't know whether often goes with people who steal or whether it goes with get arrested. That leads to syntactic ambiguity. Here's another one. Kathy hit the man with the hat. It needs to be written. Did she take a hat and hit the man? Kathy hit the man with the hat, or did she hit the man and the man was wearing a hat? Right? So you have to rewrite that sentence to get rid of the ambiguity. I'll rewrite it one way. You could do your own. But let's say she hit the man wearing a hat. Then you could say Kathy hit the man who was wearing a hat. That gets rid of the ambiguity. David saw the farmer with binoculars. That's syntactically ambiguous because it could mean two totally different things. Does it mean that David was looking through binoculars? With binoculars, David saw the farmer. If that's what it means, then you could rewrite it that way, get rid of the ambiguity. Or it could mean that the farmer had binoculars and David saw the farmer, and the farmer had the binoculars. Okay, so ambiguous. Here's another one. Imagine you're on a tennis court and you want to play, and you're a beginner in tennis. And here's a sign. Players with beginner skills only may use court 1. Now, because where the word only was placed in here, we don't really know what it means. The only could go with the players with the beginning skills. So it could mean this. Players who have only beginner skills, okay, let's say that would me because I have beginner skills in tennis, may use court 1. So it could mean that. Players who only have beginner skills, they may use court 1. Let's say there's 2 courts. They may use court 1. It doesn't say they can't use court 2. It just says they may use court 1. It says nothing about court 2. So you assume that you could also use court 2. So the first one is players who have only beginner skills may use court 1, but the only could go with the other. It could go with what court you can use. So you could take it as meaning this. Players with beginner skills may only use court 1, in which means if there's 2 courts in the second reading, players with beginner skills only may use court 1. You cannot use court 2. In the first reading, you could use both courts. So that's syntactic ambiguity. Let me give another one. Let's say this is more a serious one. Let's say you're going to go, this is from a AAA pamphlet talking about what type of identification you need when you go to drive for people traveling to Canada. Here's what it said. To travel in Canada, maybe I should write this one out because it's a little more complicated. So to travel in Canada, you will need a birth certificate. You will need a birth certificate. You will need a birth certificate or a driver's license. And other photo ID. Now, this is going to create big problems because you don't really know what you need. To travel in Canada, you will need, what do you need? Do you need a birth certificate? That's one thing. So that would be enough. Or a driver's license and another photo ID. So the one way to read it is that you will need a birth certificate or something else. So if you have a birth certificate, that's all you need. You'll be fine. On the other reading of it, to travel in Canada, you will need a birth certificate or a driver's license. So you need one of those 2 and other photo ID. In the second reading, you're going to need 2 pieces of identification. The first one, only 1. And that's the reason, that's ambiguous. You don't know what it means, and it's caused by a poorly written sentence. Okay, so that's all I'm going to talk about today. I'll do some more of these on chapter 3.